excited about this new season of The Explorer, and I'm super excited about Casey Everett being on the show. Casey is a lifelong falconer, and I don't mean falconer like, he has a pet bird in his backyard. Like, this guy eats, breathes, sleeps this from his childhood, when he was riding a bicycle around with a red tail on his handlebars. So, like, this guy is as seriously legit when it comes to falconry as you're ever going to find. And I guess in more recent years, he has decided to move into the podcast world as he co-hosts an extremely successful podcast, The Sporting Chance, where primarily they focus on falconry, and that's they're the largest falconry podcast in the world. But in addition to that, they also, just dive into all kinds of fair chase hunting, whether it's with dogs or archery and those kinds of things. So if you love hunting, if you love wildlife, and if you're all about real conservation, this is going to be a great conversation to have. Casey, how's it going, man?
It's good. Good, man. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm glad. I'm glad you're on. And I see that you have a falconry meet this weekend that you're gearing up for.
Yeah, you should come down, and you should bring your sponsors. We're trying to get them to come down. It's a lot of fun, man. It's a really good meet.
Well, I mean, if it's anything like what I saw on your reels today, I mean, I've spent more hours hiking through knee-deep snow this winter with my red tail than I care to confess, and have not bumped a single hair. It's really demoralizing. We had a tail chase on a partridge, which is kind of a losing battle. We had I had him dive into a river. I think I sent you that video. He dove. Yeah. I didn't have him. He decided to dive after a duck and ended up taking a swim in an icy river. And he even chased a flock of turkey. But so far, no joy. And I know that you're not really a falconer until you've harvested game. So I can't really call myself a falconer yet.
Yep. My sponsors made sure to let me know that very adamantly. You can get your bird, you could do all this, you could be excited. So you catch something with it, you're not really a falconer yet. But I do not envy you, because I know the area you live in, and it is as pretty much as brutal as it gets and as sparse as it gets. And, to get hair, I mean, snowshoe hare is one of my bucket list species. I need to catch one with my bird before I die. And I've never even seen one. So, to go out and that's all you have to hunt, and maybe a squirrel or two, barely, right? And
I saw my first red squirrel of the entire winter while I was training my sled dogs yesterday. I have not even seen a red squirrel all winter long until yesterday.
Yeah. It's just brutal country up there. A lot of snow. I mean, we just got dumped with almost 18 inches of snow last night. So I'm feeling your pain. And you need dogs for what you're doing. You need dogs to push and cover ground, because if you're going to do it on snowshoes with your bird following, I mean, it could take weeks, months to just see one. And
I know we talked about this, and I know you just added on a spaniel to your hunting team. I'm really kind of leaning toward getting a beagle.
Yeah, why not?
There's a guy here in the region that hunts snowshoe hare with beagle, and he just had a litter, and he messaged me today, and he said, hey, I've got some pups here. Do you want one? And I said, man, I got a 250-mile 3-day dog sled race this weekend. Let me get past that, and then we'll talk about getting.
Tell them to save you one for when you get back, so they don't get sold. Because it's the perfect time. Right now is the perfect time to get a dog, honestly, and he knows that.
Female or male?
I like females. Yeah. I only run bitches. The males, they mark on the house. I mean, they say that the dog, they could be more tough, more resilient to discipline, less emotional. And that's, not to trigger people, but it's I run only bitches in my house, and they are a little bit catty with each other. And with me, you can't, and then you can tell, I watched not that like maybe 2 weeks ago, I watched Franny come into heat, and I'm like, is this dog like, more schizophrenic than normal? Like I left her home one day, took the spaniel and the other dachshund Hawking, came in the door, put them back. We have like a sunroom where they are, and then they go outside. Put them down, and she is 5 pounds, right? The spaniel's like 27 pounds. The other dachshund's like 12 pounds. She comes running out of the crate, 5 pounds, and just latches on to both of them and literally tries to fight both of them to the death, where I had to like rip her off of them while she's snarling. And we were in the middle of an episode too.
Yeah.
I dropped them over the fence, ran into the show. Aaron was mad at me, my co-host. And then as I'm like, oh yeah, I'm sorry, I was just running a little late, I hear like this commotion on the other side of the wall, and they're literally like a fight to the death in there for no reason.
Well, 30 years of mushing, and I'm working with anywhere on the expedition last year. It was 16 dogs at a time.
Yeah.
This year for the race, it's 12 dogs. And from what I've seen, with leaders, it's easier to make a female a lead dog. Because just that natural connection, all that stuff, blah 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 blah. They are slightly smarter, whatever. But when you get a good male, it's like light years ahead of it's easier to make a female lead dog, but when you get a male lead dog that's a real leader, he far surpasses the other ones. And the other thing, talking about the real catty, bitchy thing going on with the bitches is, if a female's in heat, she tries to usurp dominance on the other females. Or if she's not the alpha female, the other females are going to recognize that she's in heat, and they're going to put the smack down on her. So all it takes is one female on the team for all the females on the team to just go ape. And that's why my mentors like Mitch Seavey and Dallas Seavey, Iditarod champions, they're like, they only run male teams. But then they have 100 to 160 dogs in their yard to put their team together from, so that they can be extra picky, about what they're.
I've seen some phenomenal males. I've seen some phenomenal females, but I can kind of see what you're saying. Like, the male dogs over the years, I've been running dachshunds since before I got my first bird. That was like a prerequisite to get sponsored. Was get a dachshund, get it trained, and then we'll talk about sponsoring.
And that's what you said to me. You were like, dude, you got to get a dog.
Yeah, especially where you live. I mean, it's like I could go out and pull vines and beat brush with a stick to get rabbits to move and get squirrels to move. But where you are, like, you need that extra set of legs. You need that nose. You gotta cover some ground. A beagle's great for that too. And the red tail, look at Mike Radford up in Alaska hunting snowshoes with red tails and goshawks. He's got a pack of Yog Beagle mixes, and I think they like them because they're a little bit more long-legged, a lot of drive, and they just push and push and push. And the red tail just follows the dogs.
Yeah,
he doesn't even do anything. He just tracks them down when he hears the squeal off in the distance.
Yeah.
It's just that's the kind of operation you got to put together where you're at if you want to find success. That's just what I would do if I lived where you live.
No, for sure, you're right. And my sponsor, Tammy, saying the exact same thing. She was like, Jonathan, I know you're discouraged. You need a dog. I know you're discouraged. You need to get a dog. So because my tear soul, and I, for all of my Christian friends on here, they know I don't swear, but I'm about to swear because I'm quoting someone else. When our mutual friend Robert, he's like your Tearsel's an asshole, man. Footed him and all this stuff, and he acts. It's really weird. Tammy and I were talking about this. Maybe we can get into it later, and I can pick your brain. He acts like an imprint. He screams all the time. Tammy says he is the most vocal red-tailed hawk that she's ever seen. So I don't know why he was late, being trapped. So I don't know what that is, but I mean, he's cheep, 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 cheep. The moment he hears me, I stop the truck. He hears me opening the door to get to his giant hood, and he's just going off like an imprint. It's weird.
Yeah. Just I had a bird like that also years and years ago, and it turned into a nightmare the second season. And knowing what I know now and stuff like that, I would have done things differently, but I was just opening up the door to the mule all summer during the molt and just basically just tossing food to him.
Yeah.
And she was like that.
Yeah.
And as soon as her weight came down and went into the field, I mean, she was trying to take people's heads off.
Yeah.
Because she just got like, these are other hawks, I guess. And, I'm going to kill everybody that's in my hunting area. And I mean, she knocked my friend on his head. Like he literally hit him in the back of the head and spun him over, and yeah. So just,
he hasn't done that yet. And one thing that, Tammy says that I've done right is I've gotten him used to flying to anyone with a glove that'll hold the fist up. So that's good. But, he hasn't like hit anybody on the head or anything yet, but he is starting to nail my glove really hard. Like he'll do a flyby and just hammer my glove and then just keep right on going. And I'm like, ow.
Yeah.
So
red tails are scary when they switch and you are on the menu or you are, that's why most people don't fly imprint red tails in the States, because we can get passage birds. In Europe, I mean, they're literally taking eyes out of people's heads. It's an imprinted red tail is a scary bird. I find them more, even the passage birds that have a little bit of the footiness and stuff, I find them way more intimidating than any goshawk personally. It's a scary bird.
Well, let me pick your brain on all of that. But before we go back to your beginning and talk about how you got into all of this, let's, talk about your podcast. You guys are very successful. I love your show. There are really legitimately less than a handful of podcasts that I will listen to every single week. And yours drops Sunday night or, before I wake up Monday morning.
Yeah.
And I've listened to it. It's been listened to by Tuesday. You guys are doing really great things. Shout out to Aaron. So tell me what got you into that.
Aaron got me into it. I mean, I was fantasizing about the idea of starting my own podcast. I'm not like my social media and stuff like that, it lends itself to make me think that I'm good with like all that stuff. I'm really not. So the idea of like recording, hours of audio and then editing it and uploading it, like that was a little daunting. And I even like practiced like intros and stuff, like while I was in between jobs, like in the truck, like, and then Aaron just reaches out to me and he's like, dude, I want to do a Falconry podcast and I think you should do it with me. And I'm like, dude, I was kind of like thinking the same thing.
And
okay.
how did you two connect? Like, how did you guys know each other?
No, I mean, we were Facebook buddies forever. He had dachshunds, I had dachshunds, and he breeds dachshunds. And it was like, I always followed his stuff. He followed my stuff. And then he reached out, we'd always talk about other stuff, but then, that came up and I'm like, dude, it's a lot of work. He's like, no, my wife's going to edit everything. She knows how to do that stuff. All we got to do is show up and talk and get guests. And that's it. I'm like, that doesn't sound so bad.
Yeah.
And so it kind of like started like that. And basically and the reason why we're so successful, I mean, we're getting, leaps and bounds, the biggest, falconry podcast there is.
Yeah.
And
you're kind of, I'm going to say it, you're kind of sucking the oxygen out of the room. It looks like you've put the death nail in another falconry podcast recently.
Poor guy, man. We were going to send him a care package. Poor guy. No, shout out to Mounier, Falconry Chronicles. So there's a couple other podcasts that are, falconry, focused podcasts, and they're great in their own right. Right. So John,
he's all about chronicling, the stories of the older guys. And I love that. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, exactly. And basically he started his show with the thought process of I'm going to get falconers' stories documented, and then we're going to put them all in the archives of falconry, which is a huge like museum for falconry.
That loves you.
Yeah. They're my best friends. They love me.
Yeah.
Long story short, but yeah. And that's sarcasm, but so that's the premise of his podcast. So it's very professional. It's very regimented. It has a structure to it. Not that ours doesn't, but his is, intro, stories, piece of advice, ending. And ours is kind of like, intro, backstory, dive deep into topics. And that was the thing that kind of, not bothered me, but I just, he'd have some really, because John gets like some real, and we get good guests too now, but we had to, put our name out there and get people interested in wanting to come on the show. But John would get really good guests and he'd be talking to them about topics, but there was no, like, I guess for the average falconer, it was fun because you would get to hear this person that you've only read about or whatever talking. But I wanted to know, like, how are you doing that? Like, okay, you're going out and you're catching your limit of quail, in this spectacular fashion, but you're just breezing over it. Like, how are you doing that? Like, how are you setting this up? Like, what is your day?
Let's get down and dirty and have an in-depth conversation about that.
Exactly.
The mechanics of it.
The mechanics, the backstory, everything that led up to it. And, not that we're super analytical like Fat Bird Ugly Dog. So that's the other podcast, Fat Bird Ugly Dog.
And you had him on your show recently.
Yeah, Al Frank, he's a great guy, really nice guy. He's very like, he's like one of those guys that's like, very well read, like he's a scholar, it's like that. And when I go to a falconry meet and when I'm hanging out with, very respected falconers, good guys, not like, the scum of the earth, like, I don't know, you know what I mean? Like, I'm hanging out with regular everyday guys.
You're hanging out with the guys that tell you that goshawks are a far distant fourth on the list of.
Right. Exactly. That was a fun one. And so when I'm talking to these people, and Aaron had the same exact thought, and we're at a meet, the conversation and discussion is so much different and so much more like back and forth. We're not trying to like impress somebody that's listening, because falconry has this thing of like posh, I'm a falconer, I conduct myself, in this. It's like, dude, like everybody that I know, so many people, even well-respected guys, like they're just getting done with their shift. They're speeding home.
I can tell right away when someone's being interviewed where they fall on that spectrum by how they say the word falconry.
Right. Falconry or
falconry.
Yeah. You start hearing that, I start rolling my eyes. Now I gotta make fun of you.
You hear the O instead of the A in falconry, and you know.
It's like they're fitting into a niche. So our premise of our show is to not limit ourselves to a time frame, also not drag it out unnecessarily. Not limit ourselves to a time frame and communicate with the guests like you would be sitting, at a table at a falconry meet, listening to two guys you like, have a back and forth conversation.
Yeah.
Whether you're debating, whether you're arguing, like we've had, whether there's controversy, like, you've dealt with, we just let it go.
Yeah.
We just let it go. And then that's how stuff gets brought to the front. Questions get answered, things happen that are good. And that's the premise of our show. So shout out to Aaron Kincaid, my co-host, and his wife, Courtney Kincaid.
So I don't know if you noticed, but I'm a sixth generation Tennessean. And so if the Southeast is the Bible Belt, I came from the buckle of the Bible Belt.
Yeah.
And I told Aaron, I was like, man, you're just too liberal, man. I have to pull your Southerner card. You just,
yeah.
No, he can't claim to be a Southerner anymore. I told him I was pulling his card.
No, man, when they go to college, man, he's got the master's degree. Aaron's a smart guy. When they go to college, they get indoctrinated. We know how it goes, right?
I do. Right, and you know what's crazy? You were homeschooled. I was homeschooled as well.
Oh wow! I don't know if I knew that. Did you tell
me? My first education was in theology, and then I got a bachelor's in biology, and then I did graduate level. I didn't finish it, but I did conservation management
that's cool.
On grad level. So really passionate about that stuff. So sometimes when you guys are talking, and I don't want to rabbit trail here, but when you're talking about the northeastern coyote, which I spent 4 years of my life studying, I'm just like, but
well, maybe we got to get you back on to clarify.
talk about coyotes.
Well, I mean, listen, they're a huge problem, and there's a lot of hearsay and a lot of opinions about, like, is that why there's no rabbits in certain areas? Is it the coyote? Is it the fox?
Yeah.
What is it? And I kind of lean towards it's probably a combination of the coyote, habitat loss, whatever.
It's so. And these are the theories, and how theories go. They're it's not factual, it's not set in stone. But just like with the goshawk, following the whatever it is, I can't remember now, the 8-year cycle, I think it was, of the snowshoe hare rise
cyclical.
and fall. So what we think we know
Yeah.
in conservation management is predator numbers follow prey numbers, not the other way around. So, in other words, it's the prey numbers theoretically that are dictating the number of predators, not the predator numbers dictating the number of prey. And
Mm.
like on Isle Royale, which is a very isolated island in the Great Lakes, scientists, and it's a national park, scientists are able to study this. You've got a moose population on the island and you've got a wolf population on the island, and you'd think the wolves would wipe out the moose. It never happens because of this. The moose numbers go up, then the wolf numbers go up. And when the wolf numbers go up, the moose numbers start to go down, and then the wolf numbers go down. And so there's this pattern that's always taking place. The big problem we're having here is that not only are coyotes invasive species, but for the part of Maine I live in, whitetail deer are invasive species. This is caribou country. This isn't whitetail deer country. But anyway,
Interesting. That's very interesting.
yeah,
I didn't know that.
yeah, we got to chat about that. The first buck that got shot up here was in 1910. Was the first
Wow.
buck harvested up here. Timber practices and farming practices made it a little bit more habitable up here, but the winters. We have a traditional winter, and it almost wipes out our herd every time because
Right.
physiologically the deer just aren't adapted. And then, of course, what happens is we have an 8 foot snow and freezing temperatures, and the deer are freezing and starving to death. The coyotes take advantage of it, and then everyone's like, "Kill the beast! It's the coyotes! The coyotes are killing our white-tailed deer!" And it's like, yeah, I mean, they're both invasive species. They're just trying to
Right.
figure it out at this point. But yeah, so let's go way back. How did a kid in New Jersey get into falconry? Like, how did you stumble onto this?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty simple. I mean, like yourself, I was homeschooled, and I think most children that were homeschooled, it has a lot to do with the mother, home, teaching, beating the children, disciplining. So we were homeschooled, and my mom was very involved. And the one thing that's really great about homeschooling, and it's nowadays it's like making a huge. Not that he's
Huge.
making a comeback. It's becoming like a regular part of conversation, because when I was a kid and I'd tell people I was homeschooled, like, the parents would like, are you learning? And they start like asking me like math problems. Like, it's crazy, Nowadays, like, you say you're homeschooling your kids, and people that are just like normies are like, oh my gosh, I just wish I could do that.
Yeah,
Like, that
yeah.
sounds so amazing. So my mom was very involved, and she saw all of our strengths and our weaknesses, right? Having, I have two brothers and a sister. So there's four of us, and we all, learn in different ways, different paces. And I was really geared towards like nature, outdoors kind of stuff. Like I would go and like, it's totally illegal, but I'd like catch ducklings and like bring them home, and, catch baby rabbits and, whatever else. And so she was reading like some outdoor, I was also a Boy Scout. So I think it was like Outdoor Life or Field and Stream, but it ended up being my grand sponsor, Teddy Moritz. They did a feature on her. And my mom, we were on a walk, we have to go, pick up leaves in the fall and like stencil them on paper.
Oh, yeah.
And, all that stuff, the fun
Good
stuff.
times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like a I remember beautiful, big female adult red tail landed right above us on the trail, and we were in like a residential area. So the bird wasn't fearful of people at all, just sat there looking down at us, like kind of like no fear. And we just stopped and were staring at it. And then my mom was like, oh, I read an article in Field and Stream that you can actually get a license to have one of those and like hunt with it. And I'm like, no way that's like a real thing, I was in Lord of the Rings and stuff like that.
Oh yeah.
And so I'm like, that's like Lord of the Rings. That's like, stuff like that. Harry Potter was demonic, so we didn't watch Harry Potter.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah,
No,
satanic. And there's real spells.
I still haven't watched it.
Me neither. I've never read the books. There's real spells in that movie, ladies and gentlemen. So if you want to get possessed, go right ahead.
That's right. I've got a Dungeons and Dragons, not me, but there's a Dungeons and Dragons club at my school. And man, when I was a kid, man, that was anathema.
Nope. Friggin' Yu-Gi-Oh cards. What's the other one? Dragon Ball Z, all demonic. You can't watch any of that stuff. And so like we went down the rabbit hole. I mean, I couldn't sleep. Like I didn't even think that was a real thing, And so we looked into it together, this and that. And we called the state, because like the first step is always call your state Fish and Wildlife Agency and ask what's required. And their job primarily in that situation is to discourage you, because they get calls nonstop all day, especially nowadays with social media. Everybody wants to get involved in it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then it's just a matter of, do you really want to get involved in it? Do you want to build a MU, which is the facility for your bird? Do you want to track down a sponsor? Do you want to buy all the equipment? Do you want to do all this nonsense? And like, we weren't taking no for an answer. I was just like, it's just, there's no way I'm not doing this. And luckily, thank God that my mom was like supportive.
Yeah.
And so we jumped through all the hoops. I got a sponsor, built a MU, custom built, 8x8, because that, we lived in a residential area, so we were building a shed.
Yeah.
And you never say by the way, if you're ever getting into falconry and you go to the town and ask like permission to build a facility for a hawk, like when you get the answer is no, you kind of deserve it at that point. You're building a shed in your backyard.
Yeah.
What permit do I need? Thank you. That's it.
Here's the great thing about Northern Maine. Anything smaller than 10 by 10, you don't need a permit to build.
Yep. That's the way it should be.
Yeah.
Because Maine is still America. And so we built it. We built it with the weathering area, custom jump box on the side for all my equipment, $1,200 with the pad, everything, stone, everything, crazy. And that's like $4,000 nowadays.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we built that, and that was like, my sister, when she was finding what she wanted to do, she was really into photography and videography and editing and stuff like that. So she got a laptop. My older brother got a guitar, and he ended up my older brother.
You got a shed,
and I got a shed in the backyard to house my bird. And my brother got a guitar because he was a full-time worship pastor for almost 15 years. And my younger brother, I don't even know what he got. I think he just got like a kick in the butt out the door. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, the younger brother, the youngest,
always, magazines or something.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's how I got started. And I got started before I even had a license. It was pretty challenging because obviously it's a big commitment from the parents for the child. Your sponsor has to, obviously take responsibility for you. And if you start, if you slack off or you do something stupid, it reflects on them. So it did take a lot of, poking and prodding and pushing to get my sponsor to sponsor me. And, it's a lifelong relationship now.
Yeah.
When my mom and dad eventually got divorced, which was unfortunate, I had nowhere to live. I was 24, going to plumbing school, and I ended up living in his basement for like 4 years. And then, so it's like, they're like part of my family. They're at my wedding. I was at his wedding, this and that. And so you do create a lifelong thing. And my mom also saw this, the other aspect of it is you got a kid that's homeschooled, very social, a lot of friends. When you're 13, 14, 15, who you hang out with, you're going to become, as we say as parents now, they're going to become the common denominator of their friends.
That's right.
And my mom, very quickly realized that, okay, this is a guy, this is a master's degree in mathematics, my sponsor. His brother, who lived right next door, is like a tech executive. And their sponsor, who I was sponsored at the same time, was a lawyer. And like, so you're going out and flying birds, having fun with your buddies that are older than you, but like you're hanging out with guys that are like successful, good family people. And like, you get to like learn a lot, so when your friends are talking about nonsense, you're like, this is, so that really helped me and maybe saved me from getting involved in stuff that I shouldn't have been getting involved in. And so it was a huge, I would say it was a blessing, but my wife would probably say that it wasn't, because it does take a lot of time. And so if my older brother didn't have time or wouldn't drive me to the field with my birds and my mom, I would just hop on my bicycle, put my red tail on the handlebars and drive down the street and go catch a squirrel or two and then ride home,
That's
and
great.
it was just nonstop.
I see the way people look at me when I'm in a field and they drive by. I can't imagine how people were looking at you with bicycle with a red-tailed hawk on the.
Yeah, but they looked at us like that regardless if the one child had a hawk on his handlebars, because we were the only kid. We were the homeschooled kids in the neighborhood, right? We were ostracized, number one. We were all very athletic, so we had bike jumps and ramps in our yard. Like, all the neighborhood kids would come to our house on Saturday, and my parents were like out of their minds, because like that's like a lawsuit waiting to happen. We had like half pipes. We drag them out of the garage. We're doing crazy tricks. We're like, doing this and that, all this stuff. So we were already kind of like, the weird, we had chickens. We were in the newspaper because we had chickens. We had like 3 chickens in our yard, and the town newspaper did a piece on us. And then when you look at it, like, I was like talking to my mom and dad. I'm like, why did you pose like that in the picture? Like, they were like purposely trying to make us look crazy.
Well, yeah.
Like lunatics. You know what I mean? And when my mom's got the chicken on her shoulder and she's like this, and I'm wearing like overalls, and it's like, we're in a prissy residential neighborhood. So, I was just always told by my sponsors, just ignore everybody, just answer politely, but, don't admit anything, just move on.
I'm gonna get a little, I believe I don't believe in chance. I believe in providence. And, something that you just said, I want to circle back to. You talked about that walk with your mom and that female red-tailed hawk coming down, and I'm wondering, like, if you felt like some, and I don't want to get too voodoo hoodoo here, but if you felt like some connection in that moment. The reason why I ask is because, as you know, canids have been my life, and when I was, I can't remember, 8, 9. Somewhere around there, 10 years old, maybe 11. I went to a state park that had wolves, and there was no one around. I couldn't get the wolves to come over to the fence. Just, I was trying to yell and doing everything. Our group walked on, and I'm walking on, leaving the wolves, but I wanted to see that wolf. And I looked down, this is a horrible story, but I'm going to tell it anyway. There's a box turtle on the trail.
Oh, okay.
And so I had this brilliant idea. And so the whole group had left, but there's no one around. I get this box turtle, and I go back to the fence, and I pitch it over the fence. And this wolf comes like 5 or 6 feet from me. And it's, looking at me, looking at the turtle, looking at me, looking at the turtle. And then it accepts my gift, right? It picks it up. And like, there was just something so magical to me about that moment. And it kind of really, in some ways shaped my life. Do you feel that way about that walk with your mom?
Oh, 100%. 100%. Yeah. And it's same thing. And, we're both Christians, right? So it's like, I don't know how I feel about the idea of like I don't know, there's like a term for it, like your ancestry, like it's built into you, right? Yeah. You know what I mean? Stuff like that. And it's kind of like when you see a wolf, pretty much any predator, something about like looking in the eyes of a predator like that up and close, especially as a child, it either like really unnerves you, or it like gets inside of you, and like you can't stop thinking about it. Yeah. Because they're just majestic in what they do. Yeah. And not to say that, prey species are not, but prey species are prey species. You know what I mean? Rabbits, this is what I tell like my wife, my children, people that ask, like rabbits' jobs, mice, rats, their job is to feed the ecosystem. That's literally that's their job. Like, they're
the quick meal for everything. They're the basis of the food chain.
Yeah, they're a little lunchbox just running around with legs. Yeah, something fascinating about predators. I mean, I don't think there's really anybody that's not like a city dwelling, office working person that doesn't think outside of their reality. When you look into the eyes of any predator in person, there's something about it that just makes you kind of freeze and stop. And sounds like that's exactly what happened with you and those wolves. And it's pretty much exactly what happened to me with that red tail, and then was even more ingrained in me when I went on my first hunt. And it was a hunt with Harris hawks, which I am not the biggest fan of, but seeing those two birds work together. And I remember at one point during that hunt, I think I was like with my hands in my pockets or something, and the bird thought I had food. And it landed, as Harris hawks do. And it landed right on a log, like right next to my head, and just like stared at me and like looked me up and down. And then the falconer, Mike Ottinger, he just whistled, and it just looked from me to him, and then just.
Yeah.
And at that moment, I like turned and looked at my mom, who was like tripping and falling through the woods, trying to, make sure nothing bad was going to happen to her 13-year-old. And I was like, oh, that's it. And at that moment, there was nothing going to stop me from getting into falconry.
But when you get into falconry and you get your bird and you're manning the bird, everyone's like, don't make direct eye contact. Don't make direct eye contact. And so I didn't. And so just, recently, this is my first bird. He was really being a jerk. I drove him all the way down to Holton, where Dennis and Tammy lived 2 hours south, 2.5 hours south, and then 2.5 hours back to hunt him last Saturday. And he was being a major jerk and didn't like me grabbing his jesses and locking him back down again. And he's just staring a hole through me. And it was one of the first times where I just really allowed myself to just look back and look into his eyes too, and it was pretty cool. So speaking of going from red tail and seeing those Harris Hawks, you have evolved into a massive, you are the goshawk man. So take us through that, to take us from red tail to goshawk. And I know, they have their pros and cons, but why have the goshawks stolen your heart the way they have?
It's a good question. I will clarify that I'm not the goshawk man. I just fly them, and I'm trying to get better and better every day. There's plenty of guys that are better than me. Thank God for that, because if I had nobody to go to for advice, I'd probably have holes in my face and stuff like that. I watched my sponsors fly goshawks almost from day one. I think they had one red tail when I met them and a goshawk. And then it was just literally just goshawks after that. And kestrels and merlins and stuff like that, smaller species that they play with and still do to this day. And I've messed with them also during my falconry, history or whatever. I've flown merlin, never a kestrel, but I've flown merlins. And then I'll go back a little bit because I flew red tails, right? Just red tail. And as I got older, and then I got into community college before I decided that I was going to be a plumber and then, go to school there at night. I did try to do my gen eds at a community college, save some money. I was trying to be smart. And it's kind of hard to fly a red tail, when you're in college and stuff like that. I mean, you could pull it off. You really have a lot more time than you think, or maybe I did. That's why I'm a plumber. But I probably should have been studying more. But I transitioned to merlins at that point, which are very small. They're about the size of not even like a mourning dove, a little bit bigger than a mourning dove or similar to a mourning dove. And so I would keep that bird hooded in my backseat of my family Subaru that I would take to class. In between classes, I'd go to the golf course right next door and, chase little birds, catch sparrows and stuff like that.
You're driving a Subaru? This was before the transition, or?
Yeah. I was non-binary at that point. No, they are the best cars in the snow.
They are awesome.
You can't I have, my wife is in a Tahoe. I'm in a Silverado. A Subaru in the snow, you cannot beat that vehicle in the snow. They are just unstoppable. And
I just had to reference the what kind of intense conversation list can we have?
Oh yeah. Probably shouldn't repeat that.
If I just read that list,
no, we all get canceled. I'd get canceled instantly. No, oh man, and so we parked the old Subaru, at the school and fly there, and like I mentioned, through the years, my sponsors just flying goshawks. And I would see them, and flying goshawks is, it's a big cliche and kind of like a stereotype that they're kind of hard to deal with. They're temperamental. They're more trouble than they're worth is what people say. But when a goshawk is flown right and they're in the right condition, the right headspace, there's really not any other, hawk species that can even compare to them in terms of explosiveness, agility, tenacity,
fierce drive, and tenacity.
Yeah, there's just really nothing, there's really nothing that compares. But the headache that goes along with it during the kind of like growing pains of getting a bird going is what turned me off. So I just wanted nothing to do with them. So then, flying Merlins, back to red tails, Merlins. Then, I went through I had a red tail during my my breeding season, trying to find a wife, aka. Which was not actually breeding because we did it the right way, but I needed to nail that down. I was getting
the courtship years.
The courtship, we'll say that. Yeah, I was doing courtship displays, and her family, her mom and dad, her dad's a pastor as well. So we were not playing that game, and we wanted to be blessed. So we did it the right way, thank God. Yeah. But that took a little bit of time. I was also finishing up my plumbing school, which is you have to go to school for 5 years to be a master plumber now. So it 2 semesters a year. So I was busy and I was squeezing hawking in when I could. But there was a time period where I kind of took a little bit of a break as we were getting married, honeymoon, all this. I gave the bird that I currently had to a gentleman in New York, got married, moved into our little shack of an apartment, $900 a month in rent. And then I was like, once we settled in throughout the summer, the fall came and the leaves changed. And I was like, okay, time to go. I called up my buddy. I said, all right. I was like, can I get that bird back? Oh yeah. By the way, she had a little accident in the flight chamber. So I had this, Jonathan, I had a 1,500 and flight weight, 1,550 gram female red tail. Flew her for about 9 years. Okay. Gave it to this guy to fly and hold on to, and she smashed into something in the mew and broke her wing right like a millimeter away from the elbow.
So for people who don't understand that are listening, the great thing about red tails is if you get a big female, they're just a hammer, and they can just knock stuff right out. And there's a guy in Pennsylvania who sent me a picture of a 1,670 gram female he trapped, and that was trap weight, of course. And he called around and nobody wanted her, so he set her free. And I'm like, oh my gosh.
No.
So go ahead.
I would have taken it. So this was a special bird. She was on autopilot with the dogs. Like I said, I was running dachshunds that whole time also. So cut the dogs loose, cut the bird loose, and I could literally go sit on a park bench and just listen to the dog opening on trail, and then listen to the bells corresponding, and then the squeal. And I'd get up and run over there. I'm exaggerating, but that was pretty much, she was autopilot. So she was just easy street. So I took her back anyway because I really loved the bird, and I just wanted a bird, partially because I wanted to, solidify with my wife that this is part of my my lifestyle. Yeah. So I wanted a bird in a chamber at the house. So couldn't have a dog at the house. When I say house, it was basically, it had wheels on it. Cheap. Both of us were smart. She's a good woman, my wife. She very not materialistic. I'm like, we're going to save our money, and we're not moving into some studio, some beautiful apartment and spending as much as a mortgage on it. I said, we're going to move in this piece of crap place. We save money, and then when we're ready, we're going to buy whatever we can afford. So we did that, but I wanted a bird at the house. You know what I mean? No dogs, but you can have a hawk in the backyard. So this guy was kind of, he's an interesting guy. It was a farm. We lived in a farm. So I took her back just because I loved the bird. Couldn't fly her. Wing would not open.
Wow.
So I kept her. And then in the meantime, my sponsor has 5 children. His brother has 4. So they don't have a lot of time in their hands either. And I was, bouncing everything off of him.
But they're not doing it right because, once they're 8, they should cancel out their work. And then once they're 12, they should be contributing to the family work.
Correct. Exactly. I like that philosophy. That's how it was at my house.
Exactly.
If you were inside the house doing nothing, you were doing something. So we would just avoid going inside the house. We would just be outside playing and working in the garden and doing stuff. Because if we went inside, we were scrubbing the floor, mowing, doing whatever. No, that's good advice. And so I talking to him, and he's like, just take my imprint female goshawk. A mutual friend of ours was involved with that bird also. So there's, so
was it like a Siberian, or was it?
No, it's well, I don't know if Dennis and Tammy want me to blurt this out, but the bird came. They were part of that bird.
Cool.
So that was 10 years ago. So that's
Cool.
how. So there's a connection between me and you.
Very cool.
Dennis and Tammy to my sponsor and the first goshawk I ever flew.
Very cool.
He said, "Come to the house. Come get the bird. Don't keep it at your house because he's real particular." He's like, we'll transfer her, whatever. And, we did all the legal jargon. And so I flew that bird, when I was available, which was more than him. And I mean, talk about just like picking up a 12 gauge shotgun and walking into the woods with it. I mean, just sat right on the glove. First thing that moves, just like a rocket ship off the glove, smoked it, and then I went like, kind of like you become like your eyes glaze over, and I'm like, I'm flying red tails and I'm just thinking, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. Now all of a sudden I got this goshawk that I can catch ducks, I can catch this, I can, I can hunt off the fish. I'm driving up to meet people, hunting off the fish in open fields. Like, it just changed my whole world. And it was kind of like I didn't have to deal with my own nightmare of getting a goshawk entered on quarry and all that stages. Yeah. I just got the finished product, which is what like got into like another mutual, a friend of ours. He says that it's almost like a drug addict. Like, they get that hit and they can't not, because it's just so addictive. Like, you have this bird that's just like quivering with anticipation, like kind of like your dogs, and like that rabbit flushes or that squirrel and it's just like boom. And I'm like, oh gosh, I got to do this. Before that, I wanted nothing to do with goshawks.
Yeah.
I reluctantly went to his house to get it. I said, I don't know, what else am I going to do? I don't have time to chop another bird right now. I'll just help you fly this bird. And, we'll take it from there in the next season. And then next season was goshawk. Then the season after was goshawk. And now I just can't, I got 3 of them outside. I can't get enough of them.
I was going to say, you never ask a woman how old she is. You never ask a musher how many sled dogs he has. Never ask a Mormon how many wives they have. Don't get it. Right. But I wanted to ask you how many birds you had in your yard.
Yeah, I got 3 goshawks out there now.
And then you got your little one back behind you there.
Yeah, the screech owl. Yeah, he's pretty gamey, believe it or not. He'll catch some stuff. I just got to get him out in the right condition. It's going to be challenging, but he's chasing. They're gamier than they look, but they are cute.
It was a goshawk that a northern goshawk, a mature female, that really sealed the deal. I was actually taking ornithology in college and came home from college, and my son met me at the car and said, an eagle, have I told you the story? An eagle,
it sounds familiar,
eagle killed our rooster. And I mean, this was a Brahma rooster, dude. And he said, an eagle killed our rooster. And I was like, what? And it was still waiting up in the tree. I threw it out. It came down. I got some great photos of it. Massive female goshawk, mature, blood red eyes. And I was like, I'm going to fly one of those. And, but as I've started my journey, my falconry journey, and especially as long as I have sled dogs in my life, I think probably because it seems like the needs of a goshawk are so high, that you have to be out with them, I guess, whatever, daily or whatever, and hunting them so much. And, I'm flying my hawk about 3 times a week right now. I'll run my dogs one day and the next day it's the hawk. And then I'm running the dogs the other day and the next day it's the hawk. So I think for the foreseeable future, I'll be in the red-tailed hawk camp.
Yeah, and you can't really beat a red-tail. I mean, they're versatile, they're tough, they rarely get sick, they're just a tank. They're reliable, can't beat them. And when you're ready, then you switch over. You're in the perfect state to get a goshawk also.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's the 3 days a week. I don't really see that as much as an issue when the bird is made. Because there is that is a misconception. I personally feel that's a misconception that the bird has to be flown like 24/7. Otherwise it's going to try to kill you and your family. That I don't really think that that's true. I think that the bird is like any working animal. Like I hate to say it like a working animal, like it's a dog, but they have this thing inside of them. Like you see, your dogs when they weren't ran that day. and they know that they're going to go run that night because you do a lot of running at night.
Yeah.
I bet you when you get home from work, they are just bouncing and moving and staring at you, waiting to go. So a goshawk is kind of like that, where they have this energy buildup within their system that has to be released. And a lot of the behavioral issues that you see with goshawks that gives them such a bad name is basically a mismanagement of the energy. So, for example, my sponsor been flying goshawks way longer than me, probably flown double or triple the amount of goshawks that I've flown. And I got a goshawk, he got a goshawk, and he almost did, in my idea, basically nothing with it. He did little exercises in the yard at night with a headlamp or whatever, because he's a school teacher also. Mm-hmm. So he would get out, get home right at dark, and he'd be doing these exercises. We go to the New Jersey Falconry meet, the one that's coming up this week. His bird was on fire. He caught like 10 things barely. I was almost at 100 at that point. And his bird basically outperformed my bird just because he knows how to manage the energy. Sure. He gets out of work. The bird wants to go. The bird has this innate desire to chase and grab and kill. So he created this system, which is not, he didn't create it, but Steve Lehman basically kind of came up with it, which is like this, basically it unpacks their whole mindset. And you can create a hunt in your backyard where instead of hunting rabbits and squirrels and ducks, they're hunting the tidbit that's going to appear in thin air. Mm-hmm. And if they don't chase it hard enough, they don't get it, because you have them on a long tether and you basically do these they're called restrained pursuits. And you can create like the most exhausting, grueling hunt that the bird's ever been on without even leaving your backyard. And in the bird's mind, they're getting what they need. You're not, irritating your family or, whatever, or losing your job. And then when you do have time to go hawking, the bird knows what's going on. And instead of the tidbit appearing, the rabbit flushes, and then it's just this natural, and they smoke it. Yeah. And that's literally what happened at the meet. And I said, what? I said, I'm out there like, it's just like anything. Like you could build a house with with a hammer and nails, or you can get a nail gun, or you could get a crew of guys in there to do it. Once you know how to streamline what needs to be done, it's not as, grueling as people like to make it seem. So I will say that to you. Got it. Where it is attainable, but you have to kind of know how to direct the energy, which you probably already know how to do.
My thought is like, Casey's got 3 goshawks. He's not flying all 3 of them every day. So it's like, no. So, but I guess, a lot of it too. But they are cantankerous, right? I mean, you got moose, a nice, you pulled Anais this year, and you were ready to.
Yeah, he was a handful. He was by far the most difficult bird I've ever dealt with in my life. I didn't think that I had good falconers, good goshawkers, not my sponsors, but other people that I respect highly and still do. They were like, just cut that thing loose, just hack it back into the wild. I'm sending them videos and they're like, nope, nightmare. Best bird I've ever had.
Yeah, he's hammering. I watch your videos and I'm like,
4 yesterday. 4 rabbits and a chipmunk yesterday. Insane. Like he became a little gentleman. He's just an awesome little bird. So if I had 2 first-year juvenile birds, that would be basically, you'd have to be retired or independently wealthy, because this bird needs to be flown. I have made birds. The rest of them are made, meaning they already know what's going on.
Yeah.
They know what's happening. All I got to do is get them to wait, maybe work out some kinks in their behavior, which is not much, and then just go out hunting with them, kind of like a red tail.
Yeah.
So that's why you can kind of pull that off. It's really the entering process of a young bird that's the most time consuming. You can't do that 3 days a week. You can, like I said, my Phil, he did that. But he knows how to do it in, a very streamlined way. For me, I'm kind of doing it the old fashioned way, just getting out in the field every day after work, late summer, early fall, just trying to put rabbits in front of him, getting ticks all over me, sweating my brains out. And he's out there with a carcass of a rabbit on a string that his kid is running around with. and then he unhoods the bird, and it's like he creates the same thing. He simulates the same thing.
Yeah.
So when my son can run faster, then maybe I'll try that.
Yeah, and I got to tell you, I've got 3 adult sons now, serving in the military, and
Awesome.
having sports like this, sharing nature with your kids. You just wait till your kids get to that age, man. You're gonna love it. Like, just being out in the field with them, and it's a connection that they'll always like. One of my sons is in Hawaii, another one's stationed in Mass, and
Nice.
then I've got one that's Kabul, Afghanistan vet, and he's back now and running dogs with me again. And
Awesome. Yeah.
so it's really cool to have this connection with the kids. You're going to love that. But this conversation has been too vanilla, so I'm going to ask. So I'm going to ask you.
Here we go.
Let's talk about the legal state of falconry, and I've listened a lot to the conversations that you've had. The Falconry Conservancy. I listened to those. The NAFA people who came on, the North American Falconry Association. Man, I have to say I agree with you, and I'm not saying this because you're on my show. Yes, they helped to form all of these, regulations that we have in place now, and all of that in the beginning. But there has been an erosion, not a progression, of our falconers' rights, and there just doesn't seem to be any. Man, I'm watching Canadian falconers fly bald eagles. I see like. I see 10 bald eagles a day, and I'm like, and the whole eagle thing, Europe, they can just go out and buy, and I don't think that you should just be able to go out and buy them. I think you should be a falconer, and I think, back to your original point at the beginning of this conversation, the whole apprentice program we have here in the United States does kind of weed out a lot of the people who just aren't, really going to be passionate enough about it. So, where are we at? And I mean, and, in your mind, is there going to be any change in this, or is it all lip service? I mean, what do you think's going on?
Yeah, so that's a hard question to answer. I'll address the 2 points that you made. Canadians can fly bald eagles, but they can't, own a firearm. So we got that over them. All right. At least we can protect our family. You know what I'm saying? And then, and then in Europe, it's swung so far in the unregulated direction that a lot of the falconers there are kind of, they almost want to maybe implement or make it highly suggested by the government that if you get into falconry, you should go under someone's tutelage.
Yeah.
And I just think with anything you're doing, I mean, listen, I like our apprenticeship program is very important, especially because we're harvesting a percentage of the wildlife. It's not really a real percentage. There's almost no impact. There's no impact scientifically. That's why we can do what we do. But you can go out and buy a Rottweiler or a Pit Bull.
Yeah.
You could buy a Belgian Malinois and live in a studio apartment in New York City.
Yeah.
Is that should you do that? You know what I'm saying?
You shouldn't have a Siberian Husky in an apartment in New York City.
No, you should not. No, you should not. And it's and you can do that. So it's kind of like, I like it, but also they're not taking a wolf from the wild to keep in their apartment either. So there's something that has to be, taken into consideration that way. And there has to be something that makes it palatable for the general public that allows us to do this, so that when they get pushback, there is some response that they can give where there isn't a program they have to go to. They get inspections. But yeah, it does seem like they're kind of, especially where I live now in New York, they came out with this thing where they wanted to implement a MUSH inspection, a facility inspection every single year.
Right.
That you have
unreasonable searches and seizures. I think our rights actually.
Well, that's what it is, but it's not. That's so. Yeah, me and you, because we have brain cells, so that's what it is, right? But to the person that has a falconry license that has a pet owl that they take pictures with in New York, they don't see the problem with it. But at the end of the day, a fish and wildlife officer is going to come walk around your property and look at your stuff. And God forbid there's a chickadee feather in your muse. Now it's, well, what's this? Mm-hmm. Whoa, what are we doing here? Like, it just can open up a can of worms that doesn't need to be opened up. Not that we're breaking the law, but
yeah, and that's just it. It's not that we're breaking. And this goes back to the firestorm that I had on my last podcast. It's about justice and the rule of law and the principle, right? It's like it's about preserving these foundational ideas that make America great. And if I see it in the school system all the time. Aaron probably does too. Someone stubs their toe, so they make a policy about how that got done, and then another policy and another policy, and the thing about federal and state regulations are no one's voting on those. Right. Like, those are just some committee somewhere is just deciding this is the way it's going to be now, and that's not the way this is supposed to work,
Right. Yeah. And it all comes down to, and like we kind of were joking about earlier about, going to college and getting, indoctrinated. The issue is that these biologists and falconry coordinators and the people that work for Fish and Wildlife, at least in a lot of the other states in the United States, not so much in Maine, because Karen in Maine, she's the best,
Yeah, like, she was great. She came and did my inspection.
Oh my goodness, what a sweet woman. She's so kind and receptive on the phone. She doesn't act like, she's doing you a favor. Excuse me. And there's a sign in Maine when you're driving up from down south, which is New Jersey. I'm driving up there. There's a sign on the highway that says, for hunting and fishing information, call this number.
Yeah.
Welcome hunters. Here's this number to call if you need information. It's I'm like, dude, this state is awesome.
Yeah.
So other states are a little bit more combative to that. And, for example, New York, they've been going through different coordinators, and we got a new coordinator now, and she's not doing anything wrong, but she's reading through the regulations, and, the feds are kind of out of it. They kind of kicked it back to the states. That happened a while ago. So the states are kind of in control. They can't loosen anything, but they can go more strict if they want to.
Right.
So she proposed, yearly inspections, and then the club came together as a group and pushed back on that and said, okay, so we'll do every 5 years. When your license expires, then you get reinspected. And that was kind of what we came to. Mm-hmm. But I mean, you've been flying birds for 30 years. It's your life. I don't need some fish and wildlife officer that's looking up the rules in his cruiser out in my driveway before he walks onto my property, being able to say if I'm allowed to keep my license or not.
Right.
You know what I mean? I know how to deal with these birds. And then the concept of, people that are not doing the right thing. The whole goal with coming together, because there was a time period in the United States where there was no permitting on it. You could trap raptors, shoot them. There was, the Audubon Society would shoot them and, by the hundreds and do studies on them. And that was their version of science. No issues whatsoever. And so now we swung so far this way that it has to be done in a way that's makes everybody happy.
Yeah.
And the point of us coming together with the feds and the states back in, I believe it was the 60s, to develop the falconry rules was to, number one, eliminate any, questions from the general public, to make sure that we're doing right by the birds individually, and to set up a system where the birds can be treated correctly, and a system of self-policing. So if somebody that keeps their bird in poor condition and unreasonable conditions, you would report that,
right?
Or you would, tell your club about it, and the club would deal with it. And if the person didn't fix what's going on, then they would report it, and then it would become the state's problem. Mm-hmm. So that was kind of all along, that was the goal. But now it's kind of they just keep trying to, I guess, just push against us, and then we're kind of reacting to what they push, what they push on us, and then we're reacting and counter offering. The counter that I would have said was, number one, we don't want any inspections other than your apprenticeship inspection. An inspection, if you move properties, because that just makes sense. Make sure that you're building the correct housing for your bird. And then I would say, keep that inspection and, those two. We're not even going to address the other thing that you're saying. But now that you brought it up, let's take away the annual report that we have to fill out saying how many rabbits and squirrels we caught with our bird.
Right.
But the guy with the shotgun and his beagles goes out and just blasts limits of rabbits every day, all hunting season long. He doesn't have to fill anything out.
Right.
And he can just pick back up where he left off as soon as season opens the next year.
So what do you think? What do you think that is? I mean, it is crazy. What do you think that is? Why in what world does that make any sense?
It makes no sense. And so there is voluntary reporting, right? So the biologists in the state, they don't get a lot of funding, right? So they get a lot of their information for counts and season bag limits and stuff like that based off of the hunter's feedback. So even though it's a very little amount, and trappers really are the ones that have the most input into that, because they can take that base denominator and they can build off of that through calculations. If they're trapping this many muskrat in an area, they're trapping this many mink or fisher. If they've seen this many things, you can extrapolate that and go all the way up to coyotes, wolves, whatever, because it would all it's supposed to be all in uniform with itself, right? So that's all voluntary, though. It's not like to keep your trapping license, you have to fill out this form and tell us how many traps you set and how many fur animals you harvest. I think some animals you have to declare, like I think fisher is one that they have to talk about. It's 1 per year in New York, which it should be more, in my opinion. Shout out to goshawks, keep them alive. Fishers love to kill. If you've never seen a fisher in the wild, the audience, I mean, they are.
Last week.
I mean, they're incredible. I've never seen a live one. I've only seen a dead one. But they are impressive animals. Same thing with marten and stuff like that. That's a serious predator. So I'm saying that it shouldn't be like your falconry license, this thing that you love to do, and this pastime of human heritage, because that's what it is. Same thing with running dogs.
Right.
It shouldn't be able to be removed from you by the lack of a form, right? Each bird is treated like a firearm. If it's lost, if it dies, when you acquire it, the sender, whether it's the wild or somebody who sells you the bird or gives you the bird, there has to be a paper trail for every bird that you own.
Yeah.
And if it's not exact, if he puts a different date than you, now there's going to be some questions. There's going to be an investigation.
Right.
So I understand it. And I like the idea of keeping it like strict so that there can be no, tomfoolery or whatever.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But at the same time, it really just looks like, you're really kind of like, you could really kind of like, if I put the wrong date on a form, like when I'm getting a bird from somebody, even a breeder, I'm purchasing it from a licensed breeder. When he said, when he puts his 3-186A form in, I ask him, what date did you put on it? Just so that I can put the correct date. Cause it may take a day or two for the bird to get here. You got 5 days to do it. I want to make sure that we're all square. Not that I'm trying to like cheat the system, but I don't want any red flags to be raised because I don't want any questions. I don't want to, raise any question from the government, because then you get on their, then they're looking at you, this guy's whatever. And it keeps everybody in line. But at the same time, I don't want more draconian, pressure coming down that's unreasonable.
If there was, let's say top three KC, if you had a genie that could fix 3 federal things in falconry, what would your 3 wishes? What would your 3 changes be to the rules and regs on falconry?
I would make it number 1 on my list. Would probably be to allow Connecticut to trap their own birds in their own state, all the birds that can be trapped. Okay. And I mean, within reason, right? I know New Jersey, you can't trap a passage goshawk because there's no breeding populations in New Jersey, which is stupid because you're not trapping breeding birds, you're trapping passage birds that are migrating. So that whole concept doesn't, and kestrels for a long time in New Jersey, you couldn't have because there was no real sustainable numbers of them because of, construction and urban sprawl. but in plenty of areas, there's plenty of kestrels. You see them all the time.
Oh yeah, we're inundated with them here.
Yeah, they're not struggling by any means. So, but just for my non-selfish wish would be have Connecticut track. They can trap whatever bird they want, and they can fly their birds. They don't have to go out of state to trap a red-tailed. They're licensed in their state to fly, birds, but they have to leave their state to trap a bird, because if they trap it in their state, they become a felon, which is insane.
It makes no sense.
Bizarre. Okay, so I would fix that. Number 2 is I would open up the restrictions on importing and exporting. Exporting is not as hard from my understand, but importing is a nightmare. So if you wanted some species from another country and you could legally obtain it, I would make it not take 2 years to get the bird that you spent 10 grand on.
Yeah.
2 years later, you get the bird. Yeah. Who knows if it's the same bird? Who knows what it's been through, quarantine and otherwise. Right. So I would open up that, and that is beneficial to conservation, because that would allow you to have, like, what do they say, that there's more tigers in captivity in Texas than there are in the wild. Oh yeah. So without these numbers of birds, and the peregrine falcon, number one, the audience may not even know this, but the reason that there's peregrine falcons on the East Coast of the United States is because of falconers breeding them.
Absolutely.
Because they were going extinct. Where are we going to get these birds from? Hey, I got a breeding pair. Hey, I got a breeding pair. Okay, let's combine forces. Let's create the Peregrine Fund, and let's start breeding these birds and start hacking them, using falconry techniques to hack them back into the wild, so that now 30, 40 years later, we have peregrines in the wild that we can actually trap and hunt with again now.
And but that same reasoning would go with golden eagles, right?
Same thing.
Yeah.
That would be my third one, is open up whether it's to open up the Eagle Protection Act or loosen it or sunset it, which they're talking about doing. There's plenty of eagles to be had. Yes, their numbers have been going down on paper, but that's not because of us. That's because of the wind industry. That's because of power companies. Yeah. Al, we spoke about Al earlier on the show, and he came on our show and did a phenomenal job. He broke it down to the number. How many are electrocuted every year? How many are killed by wind farms, vehicles, etc.? They have the numbers of all these birds. So I would open that up.
And I've seen you hunt marshes and stuff before. It's like everyone's like, well, what would you want golden eagles on the East Coast for? Number one, golden eagles are reintroducing themselves here in Maine and making a pretty good comeback, which I'm excited about. But man, like all winter long, the only thing I have is turkey and Canada geese. And, it's like, there's prey here for them,
Yeah, no, there's definitely prey. You said you got coyotes that are now an invasive issue. There's plenty of guys that are maybe not big, big coyotes, but, a medium coyote can easily be taken by a golden eagle. I mean, they are just they're just a scary bird. I don't really have any desire to fly one. I used to when I was younger, but realistically, where am I going to fly it in New Jersey? I'll catch a couple geese with it. Great. And then it will kill somebody's dog. You know what I mean? It's just, this is an animal that just views anything, that's 30 pounds or less as just potential prey. Yeah. We want to take birds of prey from the wild, which is totally sustainable and actually does a lot of conservation to do that. But there has to be some sort of a system in place that makes it make sense to the general public, and I'm sure if you wanted a corn snake in your class that's native, you could just apply for some permit and sign some, and then maybe renew it every year or whatever, depending on the state. But usually there's some avenue to do that, especially as an educator, you could do that.
Yeah, we have, we're in a cold weather fisheries area, and we have this humongous lake that people travel from all over the Northeast to fish in, because there's no bass, there's no muskie. It's all, traditional cold weather. There's not been an invasion of and that's cool. Landlocked salmon and all that stuff. And I just thought it'd be really cool to have some of the, the native species local in the classroom. But what exotic bird would you want to hunt with? What would you bring in if you could?
First on my list would be an African black sparrowhawk. It's a African version of a goshawk, longer legged. They're very dark on the back, pretty much black, blood red eyes. Everybody that's flown them in Europe says that they're real, feather oriented, like they like game birds and stuff like that, which most goshawks are. but I've seen guys catching rabbits with them left and right. So, I mean, it would just be a really cool bird to try flying. And they're very high strung, but I can't see them being more high strung than a North American goshawk. They're pretty high strung themselves. That would be first on the list. Hawk eagle, African hawk eagles are insane. A lot of the species from South America, like I think it's a chestnut, a hawk eagle. Just look that up. There was a viral, you've seen it without knowing you've seen it, everybody.
Okay.
There was a viral video, years ago of somebody rubbing their hands through the breast feathers of this insane, it looked like AI before AI was a thing. And it's like this dark brown with this crazy crest on the back of their head, piercing, orange eyes. It just looks fake. And I mean, those guys, you can have those in South America, and there's actually issues with their populations because of deforestation, all that. So it would be cool if we could have some of those here to breed and hunt with and enjoy. And then if there needed to be a repopulation event, we could do that
somewhere.
Yeah. So, so stuff like that I would change. But other than that, loosening up restrictions, just minor details. But I think I'm probably out of wishes at this point.
Yeah, I think that I think it would. I think it'd be great. I mean, I really don't understand the whole. Like we can have Siberian goshawks; those are here. You can have the Finnish goshawks. I mean, those are imported species, right? But that's all closed down now. Is
not current? Yeah, they're not currently importing them now.
So you can't import them.
Oh, the albitus birds that were brought in from Russia. I mean, we're trying really hard to do a full series on that, because this was like during like the Cold War, kind of, maybe not quite that far back, but like still in that kind of tense era. And these guys are going over there, like going off into the Siberian wilderness with these guys, trapping them, and then
that's the crazy thing. During the Cold War, during the Cold War, it's the same with the mushing, the whole Siberia, Alaska thing. During the Cold War, there was actually more cross-cultural sharing going on than there is now. And, we talk about that being over, but like, man, you're less likely to be able to. They were having joint races where you did half the race in Alaska and half the dog sled race in Siberia. And that was that was in the 80s. It was like right smack dab in the middle of the Cold War. And, the Americans and the Russians were using their helicopters to transport dog teams across the ocean. And
that's awesome.
And now it's the opposite. It's crazy.
Yeah, it is. I mean, Russia. I mean, I'm not a communist by any means, not even close. But I mean, I feel like they're more of a kindred spirit to most of us than some of these other countries that we're aligned with. I mean, they're pretty based over there, if I may say so. They really are. Putin's a black belt in judo. Come on. You know what I mean? No, I'm just kidding. He's a mass murderer. He's corrupt, but whatever. And you have to say that, right? Otherwise, you're a communist.
Oh,
yeah. What I mean? They're pretty cool over there.
I don't think that anyone that knows you is going to think that you're a communist.
No, absolutely not. But I mean, when you think of Russia, I mean, they're doing cool stuff over there. They're hunting brown bears, Russian brown bears. They're doing they're blowing stuff up. They drink a lot of vodka, but whatever. We could get past, whatever.
Well, I think there's this mutual. I mean, the closest thing to combat I saw when I was in the Marine Corps, I went to Estonia, which is part of the former Soviet Union, and I trained Estonian, Latvian, and Lithuanian troops. And there was Russian gunships like monitoring everything that we were doing while we were there training. And I think there's been like this long mutual respect between America and Russia as the two world major superpowers. Just kind of, it's kind of like when you go into a bar and you look across the room and you see the other, other dude, and you're like
bald guy with a beard that's good looking, kind of like what's going on right now.
Yeah, we know what's up. We know what's
going on.
Which, of course, you're always joking about tea on your show. You do know that balding is an indicator of high testosterone levels, don't you?
100%, of course.
Yeah. I mean,
that's why I'm bald. Yeah, my test levels are through the roof. My body can't even handle it. I'm running so hot, my hair is melting.
It just migrates, you know.
Yeah. Oh
The
yeah.
older
Yeah.
we
To my
get, the
back.
hair just to my and now it's my ears. I don't know what's
Oh
going
yeah.
on.
Yeah. I got that too. Yeah. Yeah. I thought that was just like an 80-year-old man thing, but apparently it's a
Yeah, me too.
35-year-old man thing.
And you know, like I'm just like grabbing here and just yanking out, you know, so I
Oh
don't
yeah.
have
Yeah.
to deal with
Yeah.
that. So what's I have to say that there seems to have been, and maybe, and I think this is a good thing. It seems like as I've been listening to you guys over the last couple of years, that you have your position has changed a little bit. Like you were extremely critical of NAFA, and for I felt for good reason, and I've tried to, you know, see if there was any grievances you wanted to air, and you seem to, and I think this is a good thing. Perhaps through these conversations that you've been having with them, do you feel like that? That they are, you know, they're doing good and they're moving in a good direction? Do you feel like the North American Falconry Association is doing good things and moving in a good direction now? Do you feel like something's changed? Like, how are you feeling about that?
Something has definitely changed, and whether it changed or not, the point is that now we know about what's going on. And I'm not saying that like we opened up the doors so everybody could see, but
What you
we
did.
we did. I'm not. Yeah, we did. We invited some of their officers and higher level members onto the show, and they kind of snubbed their nose up at us, which is NAFA's. They had that reputation of kind of being like
Falconry.
that. Yeah, falconry. We wear
Falconry.
turtlenecks. Correct. And so there was a little bit of that. And like anybody who's on social media, you just start, trashing them a little bit, just airing your grievances. And at a certain point, they're not going to be able to, we drop one episode with a former, they're not on good terms with this individual, but he started sharing some of the inside stuff that was going on, messages left and right from NAFA leadership. Let me just clarify. I'm like, all right, well, like I said, why don't you come on the show and we talk about it? Well, I'm not really interested. Okay. So then all right, well, all I've heard is this. And I get some obscure message from this individual saying that, but they don't want to talk about it publicly. So I guess what the guy who's willing to talk about it is true. So we kind of like just did this thing. And then they came on the show one after the other, and we kind of beat the dead horse. We had probably 10 of their high level, we had the vice president, the president, all the north, southeast director, we had all these guys come on, and they did a phenomenal job of answering our questions. I did get a little crazy in a couple of them, like, going a little too hard. But guess what? Now we're literally, if everything goes according to plan, peregrine take is going to be normalized within the year.
And that's NAFA, right? And that's
NAFA's pushing it.
That's a NAFA accomplishment. So that's good.
And I'm anybody who knows me from the show and in person, I don't really care what you think. So I'll just say how I feel. And if you think I'm, a garbage man, uneducated person, that's fine. I really don't care. But I'm going to tell you how I feel. And it's not just me telling these, that was my grievance with NAFA, was like, I'm not just saying this. I'm not just pulling it out of a hat. I've been a falconer for 20 years. I've been in the community for a long time. I hear what people are saying left and right. And I have a very large social media following. So I'm getting messages left and right from people that they're not doing this, they're done this, that, they dropped the ball here. And so I'm not just spewing it. I'm actually just basically airing the grievances of the community that I am associated with, which is a large community. So that opened up the door. And then now I can see that now they're letting us know things, that they're pushing this, and they're letting us know that, okay, this reg is loosening up. That one we have to be concerned about. And now we're in the comment period for normalizing peregrine take, meaning you have your permit to go trap a red tail. When next year or the year after, when you become a general class falconer, if you want to go down to the marsh with Dennis and Tammy and trap a passage peregrine, you don't need any special permit to do it. You could just go trap one, go up and try to kill some ducks with it. Yeah. There's nothing that's going to stop you. And that was like a 30, 20 year battle to get this to where it is now. And they've been working on this, and it's not like they paid us off. You know what I mean? It's like we don't get anything in return. We just got the questions that we had answered, and we are for the most part satisfied with the answers that we got. And the audience, which is large and 99%, 95% are falconers, they were satisfied because now membership is shooting through the roof.
Yeah, yeah. No,
It's
you guys.
crazy.
I mean, I'm definitely, Maine Falconry Association. Because my sponsor is the state secretary, and
Yeah.
I'm all in. I mean, the president. From day one, they've all been really super helpful with me, so I'm on board 100%. But I had really no interest in NAFA until I listened to the dialogues you guys have had, and it's encouraged me to want to join as well. So you definitely have accomplished that,
Yeah.
yeah, and given them a boost. But you hang out with some bigwigs, man.
Degenerates. No,
What is it you call the politicians and stuff? What is it you
lizard
call
people.
the lizard people?
They
So
are.
you're chummy with RFK? Like, what's going on with that?
I have his phone. I could call him and he'd
That's
probably
cool.
answer. He texts me, he's not, I wouldn't consider him like a friend, but we're mutual, acquaintances. He's Bobby. People like to say, American royalty, right? So he
Oh,
kind
it's
of
true.
had,
It's
and he
about
kind of has that.
the Kennedys, the Bushes. I mean, like we've got a couple of families in this country that are, it was, what was it? The Roosevelts. We've got a few
Yeah,
families in our country that are pretty much royalty, and that's definitely
correct.
one of them.
Yeah, correct. And Bobby's a falconer. He's been a falconer for 35 plus years. Um, and I'm just going to say this. Was he, a falconer? I think he was at one point when he had more time on his hands.
But he's a rich guy who has someone else taking care of his birds, I guess.
Yeah, but he was out there because I have firsthand accounts of him out there actually hawking, catching game.
Yeah,
So with people that I respect, and they wouldn't just blow smoke. So so he was a falconer, and he is, he loves falconry. That's part of his identity. But these days, like me, when I was trying to find a wife and courting, I didn't have time to give it
exactly.
1000%, but it was always something I would do anything
Yes,
to protect what and that's kind of where Bobby is.
sure.
Um,
Well, I
so
mean, he's on a level. Not only in this administration, but like you said, just, politically, socially, he's on a level where, I mean, let's be honest, even in the medieval periods, the knights and the princes, they had someone else taking care of their birds
oh yeah,
because they had
exactly.
stuff to do.
100%. Yeah, the falconer wasn't the falconer, which is what we are. The falconer wasn't the king or the knight. The falconer was the guy who lived in the mew and could know exactly what the bird was doing by the tinkle of the bell in the night. And
Yeah,
that's what the old books would say. So we are just a continuation of that.
yeah,
And listen, if Bobby's going to put on a fundraiser and he wants some birds to be flown around, I'll help him out with that. Tom Cullen, he's my neighbor basically. He sets all that up. Good friend of mine. We're like similar in age, similar in height, which is even cooler. And so that's my connection to Bobby was through Tom, and and he, I guess, whatever, likes
And
me.
what about your repeated statements that we've got a falconer that's passionate about it in this current administration. Let's take advantage of that to get some things done. Do you feel like there's that's going to happen? That there's any inroad possibilities there to see some things change because of him?
Yes, I think so. And a lot of us, NAFA, other, more prominent falconers in the community, we have a list for Bobby, right? But we don't want to, we don't want to dump it all on him at once. We need to strategize how we're going to do it. But like I said, 20 something years of trying, or maybe not quite 20, but a very significant period of time, we've been trying to normalize peregrine take. This has been a huge battle, right? And right now we're on the cusp of getting the whole thing passed and it
For sure.
finished. And then now NAFA can put their resources into, instead of 6 golden eagles can be taken from ranches, we can get 12, or we can,
Yeah,
get 15, or we can open up another state. So we need this to get done. And if we need Bobby, I think that he would be there to
that's
whatever
cool.
degree that he could be. But we don't want to, you don't want to, once you hit him with, a lot, like we tried to get him on the show a bunch of times, and he said yes, verbally, then through text messages, and then his publicist reached out to us. I've been going back and forth with her for like 2 years, and so it's
His
like,
handler.
his handler. And it's like, do I keep bothering them and like look crazy, or do we just kind of let it happen? Or, you know what I mean? So it's kind of like same thing with what we need him for falconry. Like, do we keep harassing him, or do we wait till we have his undivided attention for a few minutes and then explain to him, hand him a packet? Can you put this on the desk of the right person? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where we're at. You know what I mean?
Yeah, with the rare breed of sled dog that I work with, I kind of have learned, what you're talking about is wisdom. And I've learned that, instead of just going gangbusters, sometimes it's wise to make sure you have all your ducks in a row, make sure you've done all of your research, that you're asking the right question before you step out there. So yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, that's the thing. You don't want to chase you don't want to be like a dog chasing the car down the road. Like when you get it, you gotta know how to jump in the window, kick the driver out, put it in drive, and take. You have to have a plan before you start chasing. You know what I mean? So that's kind of that's the idea behind it. And Bobby, he's there. We know he's there. We know he has our best interests. We just have to, if we need him, then we'll attempt to utilize.
And it's kind of like when you cash in on something like that, you want it to be the right ask and a big ask.
Correct.
You don't want to waste a connection and a resource like that on something small. You want to wait until it's going to be significant. So
correct. Yeah, correct. I'm not like texting him like kill pics or like calling him at night when I'm at home, like, hey, Bobby, what's up, man? Like, it's just like, because then he's just going to like not answer, and then you're just going to kind of burn the bridge. You just he called me, but negotiation, Aaron sold his son a dog. And there was a back and forth about pricing, which was interesting to say the least.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, interesting face you made. That was kind of the same face I made when Bobby called.
Yeah, I said, if someone's going to squibble about the price of a dog, you wouldn't think that it would be American nobility.
No, you would definitely not think that. So that was a little, so that was a recent conversation we had, and it worked itself out. And Aaron, was gracious enough to negotiate with them and put all the pieces together. So it happened. So his son has one of Aaron's dogs. Nice. And Bobby, people don't realize this, Bobby ran Dachshunds and flew Harris Hawks with, the same line that I've been running my whole life, Teddy Maritz's dogs. He loves Teddy. And they know each other well. And, and he called her, it's hilarious, actually. He called her, and that's my falconry grandmother. So that was my sponsor. He called her and said, my son wants a dachshund. And I told him he's got to get one of your dogs because that's all we've ever ran. And she's like, well, is he going to hunt with the dog? And he's like, well, no. She's like, well, I'm not selling him one then. And he's like, Teddy, come on, come on. And she's like, nope. Teddy is like, she does not play.
That's awesome. It's not like she doesn't need the clout of saying she placed the dog with them. She doesn't care.
No, she doesn't care. And she's just like, nope. And she's actually the keynote speaker for the New Jersey meet.
That's cool, man. I'm going to be freezing my butt off. It's going to get down. I mean, it's nothing compared to what I dealt with in Alaska, but we're going to be, by day 3 of this race, I'm going to be -9 at night and 12 during the day, and doing that for 3.5 days with the dog. So I'm going to be freezing, thinking about you guys flying Hawks down to New Jersey. That's going to be cool.
Yeah. Well, you'll see some videos and pictures. We're going to have a lot of fun, and try to tell Dennis and Tammy to come, because we've been trying to get them to come, and
they should.
They would have a real, there's a lot of game at this meeting.
Her Goss is slamming it now, so that's pretty good. I'll let her tell you that story. But
I can't wait. So if she comes, this is what I tell people: if she comes, and especially where she lives, I know where you guys live. If she comes to the meet, she'll put more slips in front of that bird in a weekend than she will in 2 seasons. I guarantee it.
She should.
So that's the whole idea. But so Bobby's good guy. he's definitely like a little bit like, these are different kind of people.
A little lizard.
We go to the events and you talk to these people and they're just like, they
So when
got
you
that.
say lizard people, I like flashback to my childhood in the 80s watching V the Final Battle, where like they had the human masks on, but every once in a while in the series they'd pull the
Well,
mask off and there are lizards underneath. And
well, that's not so far off, probably, because, yes, they're just, they're interesting. I will say this though. Bob is a good guy, relatively down to earth. Don Jr. is the most down to earth. I mean, he's just busting chops like an everyday guy every day, like
Yeah.
regular guy. Dr. Oz he's hilarious. I got to take a nice picture with him. He was super cool. So yeah. He asked me he asked me how much we were talking, having a good time. I thought it was a good time. And then he pulls me aside and he says, "Did your mom give you a lot of aspirin as a child?" And I go, I don't know. And he's like, "Oh, okay. I was just wondering." And then he walked away.
What the heck is that supposed to mean?
No, it's just a stupid joke it's a stupid joke because they said that autism.
Yeah, the whole
was,
yeah,
That was just a joke. He didn't actually say that.
That's right. It was the autism thing. That's hilarious.
Yeah, and he's like, I guess like some kind of
aspirin gate.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I don't want to like just with my vernacular. He's some sort of Habibi, like he's Arab or from the Middle East and some. Yeah. So I'm trying to explain falconry to him, and he's just like nodding his head, like, yes, this is my call. I know about it. And I'm like, oh, sweet, perfect.
I tell you what's crazy. My buddy Jeremy Grant, who he's a filmmaker, he did a small mini documentary on my first expedition, and then he went on Mr. Beast, and he's done a lot of stuff with Mr. Beast. So while I'm manning my Passage Redtail, he is in the Middle East filming these Arabs at like this thing where, I mean, their falcons are they make like $500,000 in a falconry race. I don't even know what a falconry race is, and he's over there filming all that stuff, and he's like, "Oh, they're really interested in your red tail." I'm like, man, I wish I could sell them some red tails. I'd sell them some red tails. But yeah, it's kind of weird how that kind of stuff happens. But I want to zoom out. We've been kind of focusing right close on falconry. I want to zoom out. I look around your room there behind you, and I see your moose antler and the tanned hides, and I know that you're a passionate hunter beyond falconry. That being out in the outdoors is a passion of yours, and a lot of city folks won't understand that. Those of us who truly live in the wilderness, go out into the wilderness, go out and hunt, go out and fish, mush, spend time out there. They don't like that we hunt, but we love, we love nature and believe in conservation more than a city slicker who's riding their e-bike could ever imagine. And I know you feel that way. And you touched on your faith and our shared faith. And I'm curious if you could speak a little bit to how your faith informs your relationship with nature. I believe that like no one should care more about creation than those of us who claim to be the kids of the Creator, right? Like we should be caring about it more than anybody. So how has your faith in God informed your relationship with your hawks, informed your relationship with hunting, and does it factor into your spiritual life and your spiritual journey? Do you feel like it's a spiritual pursuit for you?
I mean, I think when it consumes your life the way that falconry has consumed mine, sometimes to a detriment, there is this constant conversation that I have internally with myself and with God, with the Lord. And is this becoming an idol? Is this something that I'm putting too much emphasis on? And it's one of those things where the answer is yes and no. Is providing funds, going to work, is that an idol so that your family is fed? The amount of effort and thought that has to go into running a business or going to work and performing, is that an idol? is making sure your bird is in tip top shape, condition, hunting, catching, your dogs are well fed. And, is that an idol? So that's kind of like something that I've struggled with over the years is like, am I putting too much emphasis on this? And really the answer is yes and no. Yes, I'm putting a lot of emphasis on it, but I know where my heart lies, and nothing's going to come in between me and the Lord. That's just, it's, falconry is not going to become my ram's head. It's just not. But the way it informs my faith, I would say that it just it encompasses everything. How could it not? Yeah. And this is the thing that just kind of like drives me crazy, and not crazy where I, holier than thou or whatever, because everybody that knows me, I'm just like a regular guy. But I don't understand how you can break down nature to its tiniest form. And like, how could you think that was a mistake? How could you think that was something that came by chance? Yeah. I was telling my son today, we just got 18 inches of snow. I said, look at all that snow outside. I said, each one, if you zoom in on all that snow, it's an individual flake. Mm-hmm. And do you know that not one single flake is the same as another? How could that be an accident? How could that be something that's by chance? How could a bird know when it's time to breed? How can that happen every year for hundreds of years, thousands of years? How could that happen? Now, millions of years, I don't know. I don't really know how I feel about that. You know what I mean? Like, is it millions of years? Is it not? Like, that's where I get it, like, where I want to ask God when I get to heaven, like, okay, when you flooded the earth, did you really flood the earth? How did that happen? Was there a land bridge that brought Native Americans to the west, to the east, whatever, wherever you are in the world? I guess it would make sense. Like, all these questions like can't be answered, but I just think that watching birds, and it just as like as a child, I was raised in church. At one point I wanted to be a pastor for a minute. And it's nature it just enhances that for me. It enhances it because you can't be out there. You can't be witnessing, my wife comes, I come in and it's like 10 degrees, or like we get a real wicked cold day here. Not like you, but close sometimes where it's like 2 degrees, or like, and I come in from hawking with the birds, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to bring in moose tonight because it's going to drop, and he's at hunting weight. I don't want him to burn too much. And she's like, what are the animals? Like, there's rabbits outside right now. I'm like, believe it or not, there are. Like, there's rabbits out. They're living their life. You know what I mean? That's God made, like, that's not like, that can't be a mistake. No. You know what I mean? Yeah. And, so that's how it informs. And just think about a giraffe. Yeah. The valves in the neck when they bend down, that if a giraffe didn't have those valves in its neck and it bent down to drink water, its head would explode because of how much pressure is coming down.
Did you know that my sled dogs have a heat exchange system in their legs that other types of dogs don't have, where the cold blood coming back to the body is warmed by the hot blood going down? Like, yeah, they have blue eyes so that they can process light better because there's so much darkness in the Arctic for most of the winter. It's like, it's amazing. Irreducible complexity. I'd love to have that conversation with you sometime. But I think it was St. Francis, a hunter traveled to see St. Francis and ask him some burning question. And when he found St. Francis, he was feeding pigeons in the town square. And the hunter said, "Don't you have better things to do with your time? Why are you out here feeding pigeons?" And Francis said, "Is that your bow on your back?" And the hunter said, "Yes." And he goes, "Why isn't it strung?" And the hunter said, "Well, if I kept it strung all the time, it would lose its power." And he said, "That's what I'm doing right now. I'm unstringing my bow." And
good. I like that.
Yeah, and this is a conversation I've had with my dad. My dad has written 26 books of theology. Like, he's never had a hobby. He's like, serious. Hobbies are a waste of time. Camping, hiking, hunting, it's all a waste of time. Just work. And, but, I've also seen him burn out really hard. So I think, for some of us, we just have this connection,
Yeah.
and
No,
that's where.
I don't see how. I mean, I don't know what I would do if I didn't have falconry, or some outlet for my desire to be in nature and the wilderness. Like I really just don't know what I would do or what I'd be into. A lot worse things in life that you could be into than flying birds and catching stuff with them.
Man, and I tell you, like I said, just you wait until your kids get a little bit older. My daughter just turned 16, and man, she went down with me to where Dennis and Tammy live, 2.5 hours south of here, to hunt my hawk. And him flying to her, I enjoy that more than him flying to me. Him
Yeah.
flying and landing on her fist, and him choosing her fist over mine. That
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
it's awesome.
yeah. Direct eye contact after that
Yeah,
one. You got to give him a look.
yeah, you're gonna love
Yeah.
that.
Another question that your dad probably could have or can answer is, and this is good. I mean, listen, we're going on a Christian rant here for people that are not Christian, which is whatever. But in the Garden of Eden, were there predators and were they killing and eating?
But they were obviously created to be predators, right?
Right.
They were created to be predators. There's a whole conversation I'd love to get into with you
Part
about
two.
what's called a pre-Adamic Earth, and the notion that there was an Earth before Adam and Eve, where things were destroyed because of the fall of Satan, and then God recreated things, and that's why we have this whole history, this whole pre-Adam history, natural history of the planet, and then He just kind of resets things, and that's what we're experiencing now is this reset. Whereas, there might have been millions or billions of years. Genesis doesn't say 6,000 years ago, God created the heavens and the earth. Genesis says, in the Hebrew says Bereshit. Genesis says in the dateless past, God created the heavens and the earth. So how old is the earth? It's dateless, So
Yeah.
there was this massive history of this planet, before Adam and Eve, and I think that
Yeah.
accounts for a lot of that,
There had to be. And it's just like, and I had this debate with my father-in-law who doesn't really speak English very well because they're from Argentina. So we're basically like having a theological like conversation / debate, like, but it's like a charades version of a debate. And I'm like, well, if there was no predatory behavior, then basically the entire world ceased to function, if you think about it, because life feeds on life. So were trees not sucking the nutrients from the other trees that they killed by blocking their shade
Yeah.
purposely? You know what I mean? Like what? Like how far? Like how deep did
Yeah,
it go?
primary producers. I was just sharing this with my students. You got primary producers, primary consumers, secondary consumers, which is our hawks and our sled dogs. That's the system for sure.
Yeah, fascinating. It's fascinating subject if you're into that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, we
If you're not a heathen,
I should come down to the New Jersey meet just so that we could talk about
oh yeah,
yeah.
that'd be fun. Well, you're welcome
Man,
anytime.
you've got to look up irreducible complexity.
I'm gonna do that. Yeah.
Look that up, because basically it's the notion that the idea is that complicated things come from simpler things that evolve and become more and more complicated. But there are some things that you can reduce down only so much, and then they become irreducibly complex. You can't take another piece away from it without it ceasing to function, without it ceasing to exist. The flagellum on a single-celled organism has 46 like motor parts. If you think like a machine that
Right.
makes that flagellum move. If you take one of those proteins out, one of those 46 parts, it stops working
Right. Right.
and it serves zero function suddenly. So all 46 pieces had to be in place, serving their function from the first moment that it was made, or used. And so you can't have an explosion in a factory and it produce a Boeing 747. You can't have an
No,
explosion in a printing factory and it make a dictionary.
it just defies the laws of the world that we live in today. It just doesn't
Yeah.
equate. I mean, obviously there's animals adapt and behave differently over time. But I don't think that's the proof of, evolution. I don't
Yeah.
think so. And then after all that, right, God does all that. And then he just takes an octopus and throws it in the ocean.
just to screw with everyone.
Because you know that the octopus, they can't answer like how they came about, right?
Well, they say that like the porcupine in North America and the porcupine from Africa evolved completely separate from one another and don't have common ancestors. And I'm like,
yeah. Badgers too, right?
Yeah, yeah,
like it's just it's a fascinating conversation. It's a deep conversation, though, probably too deep for this show.
Now. We'll just I'll just bring you on my other podcast and we'll talk about it some more sometime.
Oh, let's do it. Yeah, then we can get really controversial.
Yeah, because that's a theology podcast. We can talk theology there all the time.
I'd have fun on that show. Yeah.
I'm going to wrap things up. I want to say thank you for joining me.
My pleasure.
And I want to invite everyone to go check out Sporting Chance podcast. And these guys are hilarious. You just feel like you're in a living room having a great conversation with two great guys and sometimes great guests. Usually great guests, but Aaron and Casey, they're always good. So thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, peace be to your house. God bless you, sir.